All right, welcome back everyone for the second half. We've got a jammed-packed second half before we go for some networking drinks and lunch. We were going to hear from now the Ultimate Channel panel. That'll be followed by Adam Ferrier, who's going to be talking about the 3+ media mistakes. We love that. And also Tim Burrows is going to be having a fireside chat at the end, finishing us off. And then the amazing Jack Alley will complete it and close the ceremonies off after that. So next, I would like to invite on stage the Ultimate Channel panel. This is going to provide all of our members and partners what they need to know regarding each channel for 2025. I want to invite Hong Ewing from Alchemy One, who's the managing partner, is also one of the Female Leaders of Tomorrow program. Hong, welcome to the stage, and please invite the guests on.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be representing the IMAA as an indie media agency leader myself. I'm super excited to bring onto the panel today our industry leaders and channel experts from a perspective, I guess, of a indie agency. What I really want to unpack over the next half hour, and some of this was kind of covered, thematically in our CEO panel, is, what is it that's really happening in terms of audiences and channels? What are they seeing as the real shifts there? What are the critical kind of developments and innovation that they're driving forward? How are they helping us make better decisions? And I think we're just going to about scratch the surface. So for me, it's really hopefully come out a little bit more empowered to have kind of more deeper conversations with your clients, and hopefully have kind of constructive conversations and challenge our media partners in the room as well. So I'd like to introduce to our stage Lizzie Young, who is the CEO of Commercial Radio Australia. Elizabeth McIntyre, CEO of Outdoor Media Association. We have Brian, who is fighting the good fight for regional media, chairperson of Boomtown, making sure everyone matches. Nikki Rook, representing Think TV, National Director of Sales, Total TV 9. And last but not least, we have also, just had a break. Vanessa Lyons, CEO of Think News Brands. Thank you. So I'm going to jump into it straight away and kind of touching upon a little bit of what was discussed earlier in the session before. But, again, it's deep into 2025. It's an election year. There's a lot happening in terms of, global economic kind of tailwinds, factors, lots of geopolitics at play. How are you seeing that kind of impact the way that audiences are interacting and engaging with your channels? What are the key things that, we should be looking for? I'll hand over to, I'm going to start with Nikki, just because I know you have some, passionate views about this.
Go. The political landscape. Someone introduced me to a term at the office this week. It's called the Trump bump. And we love it when Trump gets busy because it's really great for audiences and site visits and the rest, whether or not you agree with what he's saying. What we are seeing and have seen, like you saw during COVID, a flight back to news. People really wanted to be connected to accurate fact-check sources to make sure that they were getting the right information. That really hasn't changed, and in fact the need for it has just become more intense. When we do fact-checking pieces on air, or in our case across publishing, they're often the most consumed because people are so worried about getting the right information. So we're really focused on that. How have we had to innovate as a business? Obviously, you can get your news all across the day. It's being broken on X, it's being broken on Reddit. So our goal is to go deeper. By the time you connect with our news programming, be it through the day or at night, we've got a deeper story to tell you, we've got a fact-check story to tell you. And then, of course, we use our current affairs programming to go deeper, to do a lot of the more sort of expose kind of news stories where we actually check what's going on and deep dive. And that's how we're responding. And you can certainly see the spikes when the big stories are breaking or the big events are happening. And I'm talking about everything from Trump's, first executive orders through to Taylor Swift is touring. We see everybody coming straight to us because they want to get the stories straight from us.
And I guess that's all about like the trust in the medium, right? So just kind of switching a little bit. I know, Lizzie, we've spoken about this, and it was mentioned earlier, but with the US election and that being kind of deemed the podcast election, like how does that posit like audio in Australia? What does it mean for the way we're engaging with audio?
Yeah, look, I think it's really interesting, right? So audio is one of the local trusted mediums, similar from a news product kind of perspective. And from a broadcast sense, it's always been, it's appointment listening, what time the news bulletins are on, you can tune in, you can get updated. But of course, what we've seen now is podcasting, which is incredibly, growing incredibly around the world. And to your point, in America, this has been dubbed the podcast election because of Trump's ability to utilise podcasting in a ultimately very clever way. And, podcasting is more the on-demand audio space, but also what it has in combination. So it's got reach, it's got people who are influential, who have built these massive followings, and they're within certain demographics as well and communities. So Joe Rogan audience, in the end, has, played a significant part in Trump's media strategy. And I think there's a stat, it would have taken Kamala Harris to go on, an enormous amount of podcasts to reach that same, same reach, to attract that same reach. And that's been a real challenge. So on one hand, there is still trusted local news sources, fact-checked, verified, appointment listening or viewing, or reading, newspapers, digital sites in the morning. But on the other, there's this on-demand cohort as well that are pulling the content they want on their terms from people that they trust their opinions of. That's, a different situation. And we see it coming to Australia in this election. And you can tell because you've already seen Albo on certain podcasts like The Squiz, etc. And we're seeing it because in local regional radio stations and metro stations, you've suddenly got politicians, wanting to be there to have their say and connect with their community.
Vanessa?
If we just touching on the trust bit a little bit more, because I think we've heard it in the CEO panel and also just now, which is fabulous. We've all seen the stats about how misinformation, disinformation, and lots of changes with tech platforms are taking place, which are having this impact on trust. I think the interesting narrative you're hearing across the CEOs and even across ourselves is the rise in news and the news engagement has sort of really spiked in the last wee while, and it's not just during these moments of federal election or sports like the AO, which we heard this morning. It's before and after, because they're looking to go deeper to get the real information and the fact-checked information. And so we know, yes, they're engaging in a multitude of ways to get this trust and get this information sought out in their own heads. We're definitely seeing that. But I think what we're seeing in news publishing is the spike, not just in that moment, but pre and post. There's something like 300% increases on either side of a 2-week period of an election or the Australian Open in news publishing readership, because people are going deep to get informed, and then they're also then seeking out the light and shade moments, which we also spoke about. But the trust bit is the key, and it doesn't matter whether it's University of Canberra report, you name it. The distrust in, other media at the moment is significantly higher in Australia than it is across the world. It's gone up 11% since 2022, more than the rest of the world. And I think that's, people are going hard. They're reading, they're engaging a lot, and then they're following that up and seeing the synergies across radio and TV as well.
I think that's really interesting, because I think from a brand and agency point of view, it does beg the question of like finding the reach in audiences, finding engagement and that credibility, and that's where the trust piece comes in. But I think, also making sure that there is that kind of brand alignment in terms of values, and also, brand safety, right? In terms of like the right environments that brands can show up in a really safe way.
Is it working? Yes. And it's in out of home and outdoor, where everyone is. And I think what we're seeing for brands is that people want to be Yep. So I think we're just seeing a shift in terms of what brands want and what audiences want, and they don't want passive ads. They want immersive experiences where they are.
Awesome. I'm going to take a bit of a shift. Hello. Does that work? Okay, awesome. I'm going to take a bit of a shift, and we touched on it earlier, but in terms of, local voices, how important is that? And Brian, how are you seeing that kind of happening from a geographic perspective, and the role of kind of, regional audiences and regional media?
Okay, testing. Okay. That's rejected.
Is it a dud?
What about this one?
Yelling at your children voice, I think, is on. Mic's down. Yeah, I think mic's down.
Can we talk really loudly or no? Okay. Hello?
Step one.
My. Oh,
Apologies for that interruption in service. We were look. Common is the local content to, move audiences, and I think it doesn't matter. We're talking about today. One thing that only really matters is what audiences think, and it's the goes into a week connect with those audiences across the entire country is the effort that all the media companies are going to at the moment ensure that they are tapping into the audience's desire for information. Entertainment you can get that on mass over when it decisions that have got to be made and the way that consumers want to make up their mind or population wants to make up its mind about important issues. We right across all of the platforms. One of the things that's really interesting with that and that power of opinion, every media company represented here in the course of the last sort of 2 or 3 election cycles has rapidly deployed digital distribution of their products. And I think for the first time, for example, we were having a discussion about this the other day in relation to, one of the state's cap cities. There's 40 different electorates in there. Now, over the course of the last sort of 2 election cycles, all of the advertising budget have been done in sort of certain phases. Haven't been able to required to allow those actual voices changing now. That's really interesting, and I think in terms of one of your questions earlier, it was how do things get impacted in that environment? And I think technology, which has been probably the barrier that we've had to overcome to growth as other companies have come in and kind of cut our lunch a bit. Technology is our friend now. We're actually able to offer up those trusted voices and on a micro level, on a reach basis. And I think it's a shift. Metro, that's happening regional, and it's happening across platforms.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that, Brian? I think it's interesting because you talk about tech and you talk about, I guess, perception of maybe regional media being a little bit behind potentially. What are you seeing, are the shifts in audiences that are driving that? Like, we hear a lot about kind of regional media growth, like what is actually underpinning that?
Your key word there's perception, because a perception of a thing being a thing isn't the reality of a thing. So if you're talking about the perception that we're grappling with there, it's the assumption that a set of consumers lived in a different class of, or a different tier of, appeal to a brand. And I can tell you that one of the great areas of success that we've had in the Boomtown project is that we've shifted the share of the national advertising pie, from national advertisers from just under 13% to just over 19% in telling this story. Now, we've made a lot of effort with all of you and with all of the shift the needle, educate, motivate, this is the cold fact of the matter is that we would not be where we are if we hadn't had those conversations consistently with clients. Because what I've found is clients are less concerned about the perception of a thing and more concerned about the reality of how it's going to impact their brand. And what we've managed to deliver, and when you look really closely at it, is increases in activity for particular brands who have reinvested their money. So really, it just comes down to math, and
population growth, right?
100%. Well, yeah, those audiences were still, voracious kind of consumers prior to COVID. What's happened since COVID is that there's quite a few more of them because of migration. And migration, we sort of expected that might actually after COVID, and now intention to move to regional still probably 20% ahead of where it was. In 5 people surveyed in metro markets at the moment sort of thinking that a move to regional is probably not a bad idea. And these are really lifestyle, they're fiscal choices. The quality of life with the same income can be so much better. So they're really good personal drivers.
Are there any other audience myths that you guys would like to debunk? Any kind of cool trends that you want to talk about? How about I hand it, with the mic, just...
I'm coming back.
Hunger Games for the mic. Give it to me. I have to just call out that TV audiences are falling off a cliff. No one's watching TV anymore. You can't reach under 40s on TV. It's getting really, really old. It's simply not true. And it shocks a lot of people when we tell them that actually across TV and BVOD, we reach the same amount of people pretty much that we did 10 years ago. And yes, they're watching differently. We're seeing a migration onto live streaming and video demand. And that will gain scale. I'd like to say it matters now. The audiences are huge. They're only growing. And I mentioned COVID earlier, TV audiences got a really great bump during COVID because we had a captive audience. And then we had a normalization that happened after COVID, and it was deeply uncomfortable for a couple of years there. But we've been with that for a couple of years now. And we saw broadcast audiences flat last year, BVOD audiences and growth. So far this year, we're seeing broadcast audiences up. Depends on the demo you're talking, 5% in 25-54s, 7% in 16 to 39. And up in the 20s for BVOD. So we really need to just nip this whole narrative about TV in the bud once and for all. 20,000 people every single month. We're a major audience platform in our own right. Million, what did I say, 1,000? Million, thank you, Brian. It was always better with numbers than I was. It's significant, and then you overlay all the brilliant things that TV is, the attentive reach, the engagement, the passion of the audience, brand. Go on, you guys all know this stuff, but it is a narrative and a sentiment that still makes its way to the surface. I read it in trade a lot. You hear it from people, and it's just simply a myth that just needs to be put to bed now because audiences are on growth, they've stabilized, and we're in really great shape.
Mike, is this still on? Yeah, just. I think to that point, from a news publishing perspective, a couple of things to point out. Even though there's a myth out there that they've had news nauseum and they don't want news and they don't want the negative news, I'm calling bollocks on it because every stat you look at, people go into the negative news first, and then they diversify into their interests. So they go deep and broad within news environments, but they definitely start in the hard news often, which is the breaking news, throughout the entire day. So anyone who's still avoiding the important news and the breaking news because of fear of brand perception being seen negatively, you're missing a very engaged audience there, which has no negative impact. So that's the first one from me. I would say the second one, on top of the engagement piece, is cold audiences or cowed audiences, however you pronounce it. There is a massive shift, and it's not just regional. I think the people need to understand that all people are engaging with news, particularly written news, across all types of genre, genders, demographics, age, especially cold audiences. They're now a significant subscriber and significant engagers, and it's just the sort of thing that we need to put to bed. And the third one is the engage piece. They are so engaged when they're reading news publishing, so to think that it's a blink and you'll miss it type moment, I'd love to put that to bed. And the final one is, they're not just reading print. Can we stop using that word, please? News publishing is digitally led. Most people have 2 or 3 brands that they subscribe to or engage in to get their source of truth. They're not honouring just one, but it's certainly not print dominant anymore, and I'm sick of hearing about it.
And Lizzie, I'm just going to go to you quickly, just circling back on our conversation earlier. Has the conversation around podcasts impacted the numbers around digital and broadcast at all?
No, absolutely not. So I'm not going to, sprout off every single number, but reality is audio is at its highest ever audience with 12.3 million metro listeners, and regional is really strong for us as well with 4.6. And interestingly, despite the growth in regional population, it's not impacting us from a metro perspective. So that's really amazing. And I think what I would say, and then there's podcastings on top of that. So we're not losing one, which is fantastic. We're growing everything. What I would sort of say maybe to sort of, I guess, harness the energy of us all saying we've got great audiences is, and I think the CEOs did this a little bit as well, like the local industry is thriving. And I get how much information there is and how hard it is when you are planning for campaigns for clients and things like that. And I get the pressure of sometimes there's a default position with the global platforms, and I get it. I've bought media, in my last 2 jobs, and there is absolutely campaigns and things that you need search and social for. You can't get around it. But I think we do, as the local industry, really have to make that stake in the ground and that claim that there's great Australian audiences here. Supporting great Australian media companies is really important, and that's something I think that we just all ask of the indie agencies.
Lizzie.
Yeah. Meanwhile, out of home is growing faster than the Australian population. We are everywhere where your audiences are. 82% of people leave home every single day. One of the biggest misconceptions about our medium is it's just billboards. It's everything. And we have all of our members in our measurement system Move, which will be launching, which also includes the measurement of regional. We are measuring all formats, and we will have granular data 365 days of the year, hourly. Seasonal data as well, all formats. And that includes from the gym to the bus stop to the billboards to when you go and see your doctor at the pharmacy, all of those formats. That's out of home. And we are the fastest growing medium at the moment.
And just Elizabeth, on that, I was going to ask you about Move 2.0. You've just talked about the kind of data points and the expansion of that. What should we expect in terms of kind of a rollout? What should we as media indies look out for over the next coming months?
Well, firstly, we love that our user experience has actually been created by an indie for indies and agencies, and you'll find the user experience in terms of planning and measuring your campaigns really intuitive and very, very simple. And the best way to find out more information is to come to our conference on the 8th of May in Sydney. Otherwise, we are working with Sam and the team to provide a series of rollouts to indies before then. We've got training already in place for the launch of Move in in H1 2025.
And I think that's like a key thing for us, right? We've spoken about your audiences and audiences in general. I think fundamentally a lot of the challenges we have as agencies, particularly when we have clients who aren't as resourced, who don't necessarily, they're challenger brands, and also, maybe in startup kind of environments, like they need that kind of extra validation. So I'm interested kind of just to build off that, like what is that point of view in terms of out of home and its impact on effectiveness and what we do in terms of driving kind of business outcomes.
Yeah, I guess for agencies, I mean, a lot of our members are here, so I want to give them a shout out, and also to say that as an indie, if you've got questions, either come to us at the OMA or reach out to your media publishers, because they are right across that. In terms of, now I'm not sure whether I've answered the second part of your question.
The role of out of home.
Yeah, the role of out of home. I mean, look, as you know, we work fantastic with every other medium there is. And you know that if you put out of home into your mix, that's going to increase your results, I think, by 30% with radio or television or not print. I don't want to say that word, but we know that we drive a lot of audiences for that. But I think the biggest thing that I've found from agencies when we talk about Move and what we're going to be measuring is that everyone's really excited about the measurement of regional. So a third of our signs are regional, and I think there's over 7,000 transit panels that will be measured in regional Australia, and it is becoming such an important audience for everyone. And I know that in the past everyone has said to me, well, we love out of home, but we just don't know whether it works. Well, this is our moment. It does work, and we're going to be able to realise that purpose and quantify those results.
Yeah, and I'm sure lots of clients here have regional presence, so it's really important. Liz, I'm going to move to you because I know Kieran mentioned it earlier, a lot of updates at the last week's Herd event. So what's happening in the audio front?
Yeah, so and specifically as it sort of relates to effectiveness and proving our value and our position in the marketing mix, if you like. So we had some great sessions that were around creative effectiveness, which we did with System 1, and also how radio shows up in market mix modelling, which we had with analytic partners. And what I would say to everybody in this room, if you've got clients and you want to test creative in audio, or you want to talk to us about how we would help prove the role that audio can play in market mix modelling with analytic partners, we do sort of fund some of that. We've got a bit of a hypothesis as well around kind of micro caps and startups and scale ups that we're working on, which is we would love to see more of that activity in the market. I get the barriers having been at a startup recently, but know that if we can prove that radio and audio does work for them, that they are the kinds of businesses that can go and unlock capital to invest. So very would welcome the opportunity to chat to anybody who's got clients in those sort of digital native categories.
I think I might be speaking to you after the Lizzie.
That's good.
And then Nikki, since the launch of the announcement of the launch of VOZ, what are you seeing as the material impact of that? What are the enhancements for 2025?
So VOZ became official currency on the 29th of December, and it is a global leading currency, and it was a long time coming, which makes people eye roll when they hear its name. But it is also the most robust measurement system probably in the world for total television. So the ability to measure deduplicated audiences across metro, regional, and across BVOD allow you to plan and buy accordingly and to post-analyse accordingly too. And that's what the industry was asking us for a long time, to be able to understand the incrementality of BVOD audiences as our audiences migrate over there. And it really is an incredible, data set, often sort of underappreciated. You've got 8,000, my millions and my thousands are not going well today, 8,000 panel homes, you've got 16 million devices, 4,000 streaming meters. Like, the robust nature of this data set really can't be overstated. What's exciting, I mean, that's already, as you can see, I think that's pretty exciting and great for advertisers in terms of real modern measurement. But we have also just launched VOZ Streaming. So VOZ Streaming is an industry collaborative event with 7, 9, 10 and SBS all coming together and allowing you to now programmatically trade across BVOD in a deduplicated way and allowing you to integrate those numbers back to broadcast so that you can truly understand what your campaign delivered across that whole ecosystem. Now, yes, I understand we are in a screens world and you aren't just buying television, but to my point earlier, the audience platform is enormous on television, and right now we don't have one cross-channel measurement. We'd all love it, and we would welcome all takers. Like, we would love to welcome more players into VOZ, and we've made that really clear, and we may well be doing that quite soon, which is exciting. But until we do, the ability to measure Metro, regional and BVOD under one measurement, planned by it that way, activate programmatically against it too, is huge. And you can still stitch the other channels together against it the way most DSPs do, or your own proxies that you have internally. So we're super excited about VOD streaming. So we just really, Indies, please try it. It's nascent. We've only just launched it, but we've done lots of testing. It's good to go. And of course, in the second half, we'll be able to match first-party data as well. So you'll be able to overlay your first-party data with that. And then next to come will be performance and reach and frequency products too. So it's really, this is just the beginning. It's super exciting and it's sustainable because we're going to see a lot of change in this area, whether it just be pricing, but also buying practices, transparency. I mean, we're talking a lot to clients at the moment about you need to know what you're buying and where your ads are running. And you can be 100% sure when you engage with us in this ecosystem. So really excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for, indies to kind of drive that agenda forward, around kind of first party matching, really driving understanding about reach and frequency of our plans.
Someone called you nimble earlier, and you are, and so that makes you best placed to actually come and work with us on this. So really please do.
And Vanessa, I'm sure it's super high on your agenda as well. Like, how are we, what are you doing in that space? How are we underutilising you and could utilise it better?
I think measurement is a very key remit amongst any of us. So we talk about it a lot. But I think from a news publishing perspective, fortunately for us, our industry has been united for a while in terms of very unified to have a deduped metric, which we provided for a couple of years now via Roy Morgan. So that is our cross-platform total news publishing readership metric across. We are, however, well aware that there are other numbers in market, so we want to make sure that we're working closely with the other endorsed currencies to make sure that there's consistency in market. So you'll see something on that this year in terms of us working further to make sure that the cross-platform and the unified number in metric is the same regardless of where you access it. So that's the first point. I think the second one, though, for news publishing is where we're moving to is away from the vanity metric. So you would have seen and even heard a lot, like we all talk about big reach. That's kind of table stakes now, and we're definitely moving beyond that because what's more important to you guys when you're planning, and definitely to the brands that are handing over the dollars, is the engaged reach component. There's no point shouting big reach if lots of people are subscribing to not see ads. So what we're talking about is things like addressable reach become more important, and having people be able to make an informed decision on that basis and the engagement piece. So you'll see a lot more of that as we move forward. I think the final part where we're moving to is, I guess, metrics that are going to make a difference to you. So again, you'll see us moving away from vanity metrics, more consistent, but also to metrics that are going to have a bit more substance to you so that you can turn around to your clients and have a robust conversation. If I can just pick up, and it's slightly pivoting the conversation because I have a chance to typically go rogue here, is picking up on what Lizzie said before about local media companies. I think one part of our narrative this year as news publishing that's going to stand very much aligned with all of us is it's a job for all of us to make sure that trust and democracy and a strong ecosystem is maintained. And what we'd really love to see is that there's more robust conversations happening with clients about the importance and yes, there's a patriotic component, but the importance to buying Australian made to keep trust and to keep journalism and to keep all of these things true in our system. I'd love to see those sorts of conversations and metrics start to take place at the table. We all remember the little triangle of Buy Australia Made with a little kangaroo in it. Why aren't we as a media industry now starting to form a Buy Australia Made campaign for Australian media? Because it's so important that we have this integrity and trust, and that we keep democracy strong. So I'd love to see that become the core metric at the table.
Yeah, and Vanessa, what I'd love to see is some recognition by governments of how much infrastructure out of home provides, and their response to the obesity crisis being to ban ads on transit, where the revenue that we generate for Australia is in the excess of $665 million, and yet the first thing that the governments decide to do is ban advertising on transit, which is what actually underwrites those very facilities that everyone enjoys. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, I'm going to pivot back.
Sorry.
No, all good. But I am going to just address, I guess, what you said earlier around kind of the movement away from vanity metrics. And, I think that there's a lot of work that is being done. Lizzie talked about creativity and improving that effectiveness, but, surely across the board, a lot is being done around attention and attention metrics, like, from the TV guys as well as from out of home and everyone. So any kind of pointers there around, how you can support us on that, are there resources in that regard?
So what we are working on very closely, and I sort of hinted at it in terms of engage reach, the addressable reach, and the attention scores that you can start to get. Because the currency is already available as a deduped cross-platform currency, we're now looking to make that more available with Roy Morgan in a usable tool. So we're working really closely with them to bring these sorts of metrics at your disposal and availability based on your audience and what you want to do. So bringing usable tools to market, that's probably where our focus is, we can't just talk about it, we've got to enable it.
I think we're nearly running out of time, so I'm going to ask you one Uber, final question. And we're going to go down the line here, but I guess off the back of this, from everything that we've spoken about before in terms of the challenges for indies and, the key topics that we have to speak to our clients about, like what are the 3 key takeaways, or 2, whatever it is, the audience piece, the measurement and innovation piece, or even how you want us to better engage with you guys?
Going first is always hard when you get the random end question. So what I would say is we are, as an industry, focused. So audio in Australia, we're just actually super focused on growing our audience and making it easy for them to access audio in whatever form they want. And we're equally focused on making it easier for you and clients to buy us. We just want to remove all the friction points. So for us, we've set that out as sort of an ease of access for consumers and clients as a 3-year strategy for us, sort of starting now. The first part of that was the launch of our audio ID, and look, it is, the audio version of VOZ streaming, so I won't go into it in sort of more detail. We are further behind. VOZ is obviously already launched. Ours won't launch until June. But that ambition to make everything easier for you is really our critical focus. And then maybe just one misconception, the audio industry has evolved, it's changed. It's not what you think it is. I started in 26 years ago as Dizzy Lizzie the Black Thunder driver, and I'm now back, working at the industry body, and it has changed so much, and we are so intent on a great product that we really want to make it usable for you guys. So please have a good old listening session. Put your pods in, listen to a podcast. When you're on a road trip, listen to regional radio. It is the best way to get to know where you're driving through, or whatever it takes, but just, re-engage, and that would be a great ask from us.
I'd love for everyone to remember how engaging out of home is, and that's what we're here to do. And we are going to fully explain our MOVE measurement system on the 8th of May, and before then, especially to indies. Just a reminder that you can't unsubscribe from our ads, you can't fast forward them, and you even can't blink and you'll miss them. We're everywhere that your audiences need to be. And like Lizzie has said, we've evolved. Our members have spent something like $500 million in digital. Programmatic is huge. We're the fastest growing country in the world for programmatic uptake. So think a little bit differently about out of home, and we're here to help you every step of the way.
One of the things that I think is a key takeout for me is that listening to everybody's perspective on measurement, everybody's doing an enormous amount of innovation to make the product more accessible, more accountable, more measurable, more addressable than ever before. So how I reflect on that is that not one of these conversations counts regional out, and those audiences are considered in exactly the same way by the publishers nationally as you should consider them in that way. I think probably the overriding theme for me, and I think the key takeaway in this for me is what we are doing as a collective is highly accountable, highly effective, and a really critical part of the commercial outcome of your clients' businesses. So help us support you in making them even more successful going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd echo that. And I know Matt Stanton on the panel earlier spoke about, the success of big shows like MAFS at the moment, but MAFS is the poster child for it right now, the AO before that, but it extends to other shows like Cricket, Farmer Wants a Wife, Australian Idol. These shows are all massive and in growth. So I just want you to really know that and be confident in that. But something that comes back to me from Indies agencies quite often is that TV is seen like you can only do it if you've got massive budgets. Yeah, sure, I'd love to be on the block, but I can't afford that. That's just simply not the case. And I can tell you, we've got premium sponsors on MAFS at the moment at entry points that would really surprise you, and we've managed to do some really great work for them. So please see us as accessible at all levels. We're interested in any briefs, no matter what size, and we can do some really cool stuff for you in our programming, be it on broadcast, BVOD, or both. In terms of engaging with us, I think to Lizzie's point, and Lizzie really made me think there, sometimes I feel like talking to many agency folk, and particularly the younger ones, they're simply not engaging with TV or BVOD, and therefore they don't really understand it. And I don't know what the minimum expectation we should have here of all of you to ensure that there is a base knowledge. Equally, we have a huge role to play in that too, and we can't just lean back and go, well, you should know what it is. So I think we've got to work more closely together to ensure capability and skill set there to be able to make the best possible buying decisions too.
And I think for us, you even heard it on the CEO panel, news is on the rise, news publishing, particularly with the trust, you've heard that today. The one thing I would point out is news publishing is any written form of news. So yes, we have TV news and radio and news as well. And the reason I'm drumming home the avoid the hard, start getting on board with hard news and what have you, is more people, and it's not a fact that most people know, more people read news than they do watch and listen. And that's not to take away from the other formats, but it's definitely something that comes out true over and over again across from a high engagement perspective. So first one is start getting on board with hard news, stop avoiding it. Second of all, make sure we're buying local media and Australian media and start to get back on board with news by reaching out to the news publishers directly. I'm not your best point of call. They've got better data than I do. So reach out to news publishers directly.
Awesome. I just wanted to say, I think we have to wrap up now and hand over the stage to Adam, but thank you so much for having a great debate and being so collaborative and being so lent into all of my, questions and curiosity before. I did promise that I think we're only scratching the surface here in terms of what we can encourage the agencies to go and speak to their clients and to have those constructive conversations with their media partners. And hopefully, I guess maybe the next time we speak, we can talk about more collaboration and more kind of cross collaboration around measurement and effectiveness. So I'm excited about that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.